Trial readiness is the idea that enrollment success depends on more than medical fit. It's about whether a patient is cognitively, emotionally, logistically, and situationally prepared to choose participation and remain engaged throughout the trial. It shifts enrollment from a sourcing problem to a design problem. When you measure readiness, you stop asking, how many patients can we find, and start asking which patients are most likely to enroll and finish the study.
Hello, and welcome to Xtalks Spotlight, illuminating insights from subject matter experts and industry thought leaders. I'm Sonia Hunt. In this episode, we're exploring a critical question. How do you turn medically eligible patients into trial-ready participants?
Sponsors have more access than ever to data, tools, and recruitment vendors. Yet, enrollment targets are still missed and timelines continue to slip. The industry has become very good at identifying medically eligible patients, often assuming eligibility alone means they are ready to enroll. But in reality, many patients feel uncertain or overwhelmed by clinical trial complexity while sites manage recruitment and retention at full capacity. For years, the industry has been solving the wrong problem. What looks like a recruitment challenge is, at its core, a patient readiness challenge. In this Xtalks Spotlight, Mackenzie McKinney explores a different approach. Rather than finding more patients, the focus shifts to educating, preparing, and supporting them so they are ready to participate and remain engaged throughout the trial. For sponsors, this shift may support fewer screen failures, reduced site burden, and more predictable timelines and costs, while also improving the patient experience. Thank you for taking the time for the Spotlight interview, Mackenzie.
Thank you so much for having me, Sonia. It's a pleasure to be here.
So to start, a clinical trial enrollment has more data, tools, and vendors than ever, yet timelines keep slipping. What's the uncomfortable truth the industry hasn't fully reckoned with?
The industry optimizes trial enrollment strategies for finding patients, not for whether patients have the right information to make an informed decision about participating in a trial and staying enrolled over time. We have gotten very good at finding medically eligible patients, but we haven't gotten better at understanding whether those patients are ready to participate. Enrollment is optimized right now for volume and not for human decision-making, so until we confront the uncomfortable truth, more data and more vendors will just produce faster versions of the same outcome.
Now, recruitment strategies still focus heavily on medical eligibility. And when patients leave trials, the reasons are often framed as burden, complexity, or life circumstances. What does that way of thinking miss about why patients struggle to stay in studies?
Eligibility answers the question, can this patient participate? Readiness answers the question, will they? And the industry has been treating those as the same thing, but they're very different. Medical criteria won't tell you whether somebody can absorb the information, manage the burden of a trial, trust the process, the site, or the sponsor, or adequately integrate a trial into their life. When we stop at medical eligibility, we create false confidence in enrollment numbers and jeopardize the scientific validity of our trials due to dropout rates. We move patients forward who were never prepared to participate in a trial, and then we're shocked when they say no. Burden and complexity aren't surprises. They're known well before a trial population is decided upon. So the issue is that we rarely assess whether a trial is designed around the burden and complexities that we are aware of. And as an industry, we've defaulted to creating highly complex trials, seeking very specialized patient populations, and often do not prioritize whether a patient is prepared to participate in the trial. Then we blame life circumstances. And when we do that, we absolve ourselves of responsibility for designing trials that fit into real lives. So the way we think about it is that medical eligibility gets patients in the door, but ensuring they're prepared, or what we call trial ready, creates stronger trust and commitment from patients.
And as we know, dropout is often treated as inevitable. Why do you believe that mindset is not just wrong, but costly?
When you label patient dropouts as inevitable, you ignore the responsibility that we all have in designing trials that are anchored in human behavior. Dropout isn't random, it's patterned and it's predictable. When trials have high dropout rates, that tells us something about where we failed to factor in real patient needs. When designing trials and enrollment strategies, we have to ask ourselves, would we participate in this trial? And then iterate until it's an easy yes for ourselves and in turn our patients. We also need to focus more attention on retention during the trial design to ensure proactive measures can help participants comply with trial requirements. Treating dropouts as unavoidable doesn't just increase costs, but it also hides root causes and reduces trust. And every patient who leaves a trial represents what wasted spend, increased site burden, and a trial experience that didn't live up to the promise.
So, building on that, you have introduced the concept of trial readiness. What does that mean in practice? And how does focusing on readiness change outcomes for sites, sponsors, and patients?
Trial readiness is the idea that enrollment success depends on more than medical fit. It's about whether a patient is cognitively, emotionally, logistically, and situationally prepared to choose participation and remain engaged throughout the trial. It shifts enrollment from a sourcing problem to a design problem. When you measure readiness, you stop asking, how many patients can we find, and start asking, which patients are most likely to enroll and finish the study. The outcome of focusing on trial readiness changes everything. For sites, it reduces sites' screen failures and burnout. And for sponsors, it brings predictability to timelines and cost curves. And then for patients, it restores dignity because they're not rushed forward. They've been fully informed on what it means to participate in a clinical trial and begin their journey educated, prepared, and motivated. Trial readiness aligns operational efficiency with ethical responsibility, which is something the industry has struggled to reconcile. The most ethical trials are the ones that patients can actually finish.
So some might hear this and think it adds complexity to an already complex process. How do you respond to that concern?
I'd argue that paying attention to human behavior doesn't add complexity, but ignoring it does. We already pay for dropout through delays, amendments, and rescue efforts. So readiness doesn't add complexity, it replaces chaos with clarity. Complexity exists whether we acknowledge it or not, so the question becomes whether we design for it or we let it punish us later. When we ignore complexity, it doesn't disappear, it simply compounds into a tomorrow problem that we end up addressing with additional costs, delays, and frustration.
So, Mackenzie, is this shift really about better technology, or is it a deeper change in how the industry views patients?
This is a fundamental, philosophical, global change that moves the industry from seeing patients as resources to seeing them as decision makers and equal partners in the success of drug development. We need to shift from treating predictable human behavior as an exception to using it as a signal that improves trial design and patient experience. Once that shift happens, better solutions will follow naturally. But without it, technology just accelerates broken problems. And this isn't just a simple tech upgrade, it's an industry view correction. And the sooner we shift together, the better we can help patients.
And now, if you had to summarize the core failure of today's enrollment model in one sentence, what would that be?
We've built an enrollment system that assumes trials are easy to participate in, and then we fail when humans show up to participate, or they don't enroll, they aren't compliant, and decide to drop out.
And finally, if we were having this conversation 5 years from now, what will separate trial operators who succeed from those who don't?
The companies who succeed will be the ones who stopped chasing patient volume and started designing for commitment. They'll understand that enrollment and retention are one continuous human journey, and they'll recognize that trial success isn't about finding more patients, it's about earning trust from patients in the form of participation and engagement. The future belongs to those who design trials worth staying in.
Well, thank you very much, Mackenzie, for speaking with us today. We really appreciate your time and insights.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
We look forward to learning how focusing on patient readiness could improve enrollment for sponsors, sites, and patients. Thank you all for joining us for this Xtalks Spotlight. We hope you enjoyed the discussion.